All right, welcome to the International Religious Freedom Roundtable meeting, live from Berlin. Are we online too? We are. There you go. You got 34 people online. Welcome to everybody who's online. My name is Greg Mitchell. So I'm the founder of IRF Secretariat, co-chair of the International Religious Freedom Roundtable. Nadine, president of our Secretariat, and then my co-chair of the Roundtable also. Before we start, I'm going to recognize Chris Seipel over here. He's the co-founder of the IRF Roundtable over here. And it's good to see Chris, as always, here at the Roundtable. He's the one who started it all with Sue Vaughn of Freedom House, and I think Knox Thames had some inputs. And even though he didn't become a co-founder, he had inputs also. So they started it all. And here, 14 years later, here we are in Berlin. So it's good to be here. Good to see you, Chris. And Hattie, Chris's daughter, is right behind him over here. For those of you who haven't met Hattie Seipel over here. It's good to... Hadessa, sorry. Did I get Hadessa? Do they call you Hattie by short or no? All right, good. That's what I thought.
People might want to know.
Hadessa is her formal name. Sorry. All right. So again, my name's Greg Mitchell. I made it. I'm a day later than I wanted to be, but this Hurricane Milton is headed right for our house in Florida, so I had to spend a day boarding up my house and getting my family off. We were going to bring the whole family here, but we couldn't find dog sitters. So instead, my wife is driving the kids and the dogs up to Tennessee to ride out the storm up in Tennessee, in the safety of Tennessee. So I'm a day late, and my flight into Zurich on the way to Berlin was late, and I made the transfer, but my bag did not. So I apologize for my less than the normal appearance here, but Simran Stulpnagel let me borrow his coat wherever he is. So, but anyway, I'm happy to be here. I'm happy I made it, and I'm looking forward to a good, strong week. I'm sorry I missed the academic session, which just concluded. I'm looking forward to hearing how that went. And this is our second event of our civil society program in connection with this year's ministerial. And again, the theme of our whole program this week is how freedom of religion or belief for all can help prevent the misuse of religion and build social cohesion and resilience. And this roundtable is a model of that. This roundtable, it's a multi-faith inclusive, and it runs on an equal citizenship basis. And so really we have found, it's 14 years in, it really is effective at building social cohesion even within the small IRF community in Washington, which is why, Chris and I went back and forth every 3 months or so for several years as we were building the roundtable, developing a vision. It was Chris's original vision, but we kind of went back and forth and built on his original vision of a global interlocking network of these multi-faith roundtables around the world, which we think will be effective at building social cohesion, which is going to help. I mean, you can see how polarized we are today, and the whole point of the roundtable is to bring people of all faiths and beliefs together, get them sharing their stories of persecution, discrimination, even genocide, unfortunately, but any challenges that faith communities and belief communities are facing around the world. And the whole purpose of sharing those stories is so that we can pull together and work together in multi-faith fashion. And so we call it a cooperative engagement model because we facilitate people of all faiths and beliefs engaging each other cooperatively across their deepest differences and then pulling together and working together. And the practical effects of that are mutual, not tolerance is a starting point, but it's mutual respect, mutual trust and reliance, and even love across our deepest differences. We've seen it happen at our roundtable in Washington, and we've got roundtables setting up around the world. On today's agenda, you're going to hear from some leaders of some of the other roundtables around the world, and then from folks who are interested in starting up roundtables in their own country. So welcome. Before we get to the formal agenda, I'm going to hand it over to Nadine just for her opening remarks.
Hi, thank you so much for coming. This is such a special time to be together in such a really special location. Nathan Weininger pointed out to me that we should acknowledge that right out this window here is the memorial to the murdered Jews of Europe. if you haven't had a chance to see it, for us to be having this meeting right now to talk about persecution currently and how we can work together in a multi-faith way to stand against it, and how, and of course our conference tomorrow will be really on building religious freedom and hearing from people, majority world voices, people from countries that are working to build religious freedom. It's just really meaningful to be in this location to do this. So I want to say thank you to all of you for making the trek, all of you locals for coming and joining us, and I'm really looking forward to hearing from all of you today.
Thanks, Nadine. Just real quick, I'll recognize the conveners of the whole program this week, which makes it possible for us all to be here live in Berlin. We have Templeton Religion Trust, and so to my right is Chris Stewart, who's the Chief Grants Officer with Templeton. And Templeton Religion Trust has put the most money into, this multi-faith FORB movement, budding movement, but all these multi-faith collaborative efforts over the last, I don't even know, funding, Templeton has funded Earth Secretariat for the last 4 years. I don't even know how far back your funding goes, but Chris Stewart and Templeton really responsible for funding much of the collaborative FORB work over the last 10 years, so thank you, Chris. And then we have Wade Kuzek to his right from Love Your Neighbor community, also a convener, and we have 2 senior fellows from Love Your Neighbor community over here. You already saw Chris Seipel, Dennis Hoover to his left, so thank you, Wade and Link. And then we have a few co-sponsors. We have Mercury One, Suzanne Grishman is to my left over here. Thank you, Suzanne. We have Global Christian Relief. I don't know if Isaac is here yet. I don't see Isaac. Isaac 6. Then we also have Paul Murray, Global Peace Foundation. There's Paul over here. And then we have Eric Rue, who's here with the European Office of the Church of Scientology, their Human Rights Office over there, Eric. And I think I'm looking at the logos down there. Oh, Bellwether International, Rachel Miner. Where's Rachel? Over to my right. Thank you, Rachel. Thank you. Is there one other logo? Oh, that's it, Mercury One. Okay, got it. Good. Thank you. All right, we're going to get on to the roundtable agenda now. First, I'll start with just our regular thank you to Kaylee Fisher, and we have a couple of interns here who handle the logistics for the weekly meeting. Then the reminders again. And I just thank everyone up front for following the Chatham House rule, which says that you can use the content, the stories that you hear, but please do not attribute anything you hear at this roundtable to the particular speaker, unless you go up and ask them for permission and they're okay with it. But no video or audio taping, and again, please do not attribute any specific information to the person who brings it. And that includes the chat box online. Second reminder, we thank everybody in advance for following the Golden Rule. Again, this is multi-faith inclusive, and we run on a participant-led basis, equal citizenship basis. Everybody has a right to be here. We don't have anybody here who advocates violence. That's the only disqualifying factor. But people of all faiths and beliefs are welcome here, and you're welcome to sit at the table. That's why we have the roundtable model, where there's no true leader. We're all equal at this table. Everybody has an equal right to put something on the agenda, to share a story, to launch a multi-faith initiative, and then to opt into a multi-faith initiative. And the whole idea is helping everyone stand up for and protect each other, and pushing back against all the different challenges that we're all facing, persecution, discrimination-wise. And finally, this is a civil society-led roundtable. We do have a couple people from the U.S. government here, good partners. The U.S. government, the State Department, IRF office, the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom. Others have come and gone from the roundtable, periodically come, USAID. But the State Department and USCIRF have been there since day one, for 14 years. They come to almost every meeting, and they give us updates on a regular basis. But I just wanted to say, just because they're here doesn't mean that the U.S. government endorses anything that you hear at this roundtable. And this is a civil society-led roundtable, not a U.S. government roundtable. So it's just a reminder on that. So thank you for keeping all three of those in mind. So next, We're just going to go ahead and we have special guests here. We'll just start the first part of our agenda. We have two parts today. One, we'll hear from special guests who are here for the ministerial and the civil society program this week in Berlin. And so they're here in Berlin just for either our program or the ministerial, which will be hosted by the German government on Thursday, I believe, the 10th, right? So we're going to hear from them first. That's our first, or some of those special guests. That'll be the first part. The second part will just be our regular civil society agenda, where people bring their stories to the table to catalyze multi-faith actions. So first up, I'm going to introduce Charmaine Heading. Charmaine, she's South African, but she's living in Israel. She's the founder and leader of the Shy Fund. The Shy Fund does a lot of economic empowerment of communities that were almost wiped out, but survivors of genocide in northern Iraq. I don't know if it's outside of northern Iraq also, but anyway, really good micro grants, as I understand it, to help people who survived the genocide get back on their feet, which is very important. Just helping them get freedom is not enough, but getting to that prosperity piece and getting to the self-sufficiency piece is very important. But Charmaine, over to you with an update on how things are going in Israel.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you, Greg, for having me today. I'm going to speak a little bit about what is happening in Israel. I live in Jerusalem and have off and on ever since the early 1980s. It's been a year since October 2023, a day that we will never forget, and that has changed Israel forever. We are no longer the same. The faces of our hostages are on every street corner, at every bus stop, and each day their families count the days. Today marks 368 days. Here are some of the staggering numbers from October 7th, 2023 until midnight, October the 6th, 2024. We've had 13,200 launches from Hamas in Gaza, 12,400 from Hezbollah in Lebanon, 400 from Iran, 180 from Yemen, and 60 from Syria. Altogether, we've nearly had 30,000 alarms or alerts. What is it? It's an air raid siren, like you would have heard here or in London in World War II, where people like me that live in Jerusalem have 90 seconds to get into a shelter. Those closest to the border sometimes hear the sirens as the missile lands. If it wasn't for the Iron Dome and other weapons Israel has to protect our population, I would be dead. My family, including my son, and I have had over 40 missiles directly over our apartment in Jerusalem in the past year. I remember waking up on that terrible day on October 7th to the sound of rockets and later drone attacks. We spent hours and days on ends in the shelters. Since then, the attacks haven't stopped. I barely made it out of Ben Gurion Airport last night because the airport closed because we had so many attacks. This October the 7th, while the nation grieved, rockets and drones attacked the civilian populations in Israel from Gaza, Lebanon, and Yemen. We also heard about the death of another hostage whose body is being held by Hamas. There are 101 hostages from 21 countries still in captivity. We estimate that between 1/3 to a half of them are dead. Hamas is holding the bodies in exchange for prisoners and terrorists in Israeli prisons. In fact, Sinwar was released in one of these exchanges in 2011 for 1,027 Palestinian prisoners in exchange for an Israeli soldier, Galit Shalit. The last live hostage we got out a Muslim Bedouin, told us that Hamas terrorists grabbed him and asked him to show them where the Jews were so that they could kill them. When he refused, they took him hostage into Gaza. On October 7th, Iran and its proxies declared war on Israel with the clear intention of destroying the Jewish state. What began as a massacre on October 7th, where over 1,200 civilians were killed, continues up until today with relentless attacks. We are surrounded on all sides by Iranian proxies who fund or is the head of this octopus. Hezbollah, Hamas, the Houthis, Shiite militias from Iraq and Syria, as well as the Iranians flooding weapons into the West Bank. At the end of August 2024, the top Hamas official, Khaled Mashal, living under the protection of Qatar, called for the resumption of suicide bombings in the West Bank and said that Hamas wants to return to suicide operations. Iran's leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, recently stated this month in his first address in 5 years that, God willing, we will destroy Israel. A few days ago, Iran launched 181 ballistic missiles at Israel. It's the second attack like this. The first one was in April. Fortunately, our air defenses alongside the US, Jordan, and UK mitigated the damage. President Biden advised Israel after this one to take the win and acknowledge our successful defense. But this time, the second time, Israel cannot allow Iranian missiles raining down on our civilians to become the new normal. For decades, this war with Iran has been fought through proxies, but now it seems that we are entering into a phase of open confrontation. Israelis and local Jewish communities are also no longer safe outside of Israel. Mossad chief David Barnea recently revealed that Israel had thwarted 27 global terrorist plots planned by Iran. I met 2 of these German Jewish families here in Germany last month. They were targeted by an Iranian sleeper cell. They were going to slaughter them inside of their apartment. This threat is global, not just local. Meanwhile, Hezbollah has launched over 8,000 rockets in the past year, forcing 60,000 mostly Jewish Israelis to evacuate. Hezbollah has entrenched itself along our northern border using Christian villages as cover and stockpiling within this area over 150,000 rockets, many of them inside private civilian homes. We found that they've been planning their invasion of northern Israel for years. Israel has found in the last couple of weeks evidence of this, including maps and tunnels into Israel. Basically, they plan to replicate what Hamas did in the south on the 7th of October to the Jewish communities on the northern border of Israel. Subsequently, Israel is dropping leaflets warning the civilians to leave this area so that we can destroy the stockpiles and tunnels and the Hezbollah terrorists. To date, we have destroyed over 70 tunnels along the northern border of Israel into Lebanon, and just yesterday, 6 Hezbollah terrorists made it through a tunnel and into Israel to try and kill some of the Jewish communities on that border region. Sadly, Lebanon's Beirut, once called the Paris of the Middle East, and the southern areas where Hezbollah launches the attacks are taking the brunt of the destruction. Withdrawing Hezbollah back, according to the UN Resolution 1701, is critical for the international community to enforce and to stop this destruction. In Gaza, Hamas leader Sinwar is keeping 22 mostly Jewish hostages close to him, using them as human shields to deter Israel from targeting him. Despite Israel offering 8 ceasefire proposals since November, Hamas has rejected each one, seeking to ignite a regional war aiming at destroying the Jewish state. all of the reporting shows and all of the mainstream media now concede, including the Biden administration, that Sinwar has no interest in a ceasefire. Rather, his hope is to launch a regional war that he thinks will extinguish the state of Israel. From the outside, Israel may appear as strong regional power backed by a superpower, but inside, Israelis feel small and vulnerable, surrounded by enemies that seek their destruction. For decades, the world dismissed these fears, but the events of the 7th of October shattered these illusions. So inside Israel, on the 7th of October, it is seen as the anniversary of the bleakest day in Jewish history since the Holocaust. And as we remember all the innocent lives lost, let us also recognize the global fight against hate and anti-Semitism. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that sobering update. If you've been attending the Roundtable at all, I know for those that are joining us, and welcome to all of you online for joining us today, you will hear me talk regularly about some of the major developments that have been happening in Iraq, in particular with the Iranian militias. Recently, a sanctioned leader, his name Ryan Kaldani, who took over the Nineveh Provincial Council and then took out 15 mayors and replaced them with his own people, including the last Christian mayors in all of the Nineveh Plains. So this is mind-boggling that this was allowed. And so fortunately, there's been a hold put on it by the Prime Minister, but I wrote an article in the Wilson Center that I'd be glad to share with those of you here and online. I'll share it there. But today we have with us Mayor Issam Mahdi, who is actually the mayor of Karakash, Hamdaniya, the largest Christian city in Iraq. And he came back and rebuilt in 2018. And if you come tomorrow, you'll get to hear him talk about, with an interview with Suzanne Grishman, about how he rebuilt this inclusive society. But he's going to quickly just give you an update about conditions now. So I'll hand it over to him.
Okay. Good afternoon. I am sorry because I can't speak English very well, so that I need my friend Dr. Aziz will translate. أولاً أقدم شكري إلى التحالف الدولي لحرية الأديان على هذه الدعوة.
First of all, I would like to express my thanks and appreciation for this event and for this convening to give me a chance to talk about the situation in Iraq.
Okay. كما تعلمون جميعاً,
as perhaps you may all know,
أن تنظيم داعش الإرهابي قد دخل إلى مناطق سهل نينوى في شمال العراق.
That the Daesh terrorist organization attacked Iraq. Okay.
عام 2014
in 2014.
وكان قضاء الحمدانية الذي يسكنه حوالي 250 ألف مواطن معظمهم من المكون المسيحي واحد من المناطق التي دخل إليها تنظيم داعش واحتلها لمدة سنتين.
One of the main areas that were targeted by ISIS, terrorist organization, was the Hamdaniya province, which is the home for a large number of Christians living there.
وكان في قضاء الحمدانية مجموعة من المدن والقرى غير المسيحية قسم منها احتضن تنظيم داعش الإرهابي.
Of course, around the district of Hamdaniya, there were many villages which sheltered and supported the ISIS at that time.
المكونات الأخرى من المسيحيين والكاكائية والتركمان والكرد والشبك هجروا مناطقهم أثناء دخول تنظيم داعش وتوجهوا إلى أقليم كردستان والمناطق الأخرى من العراق.
There were other components of the Iraqi community, including Arabs and Kakai Christians who had to escape and take refuge in Kurdistan region and other places in Iraq.
خلال فترة التهجير التي دامت أكثر من سنتين فقدنا أكثر من نصف أبناء شعبنا من المكون المسيحي.
Throughout the attack, which lasted for 2 years, we lost almost half of the population of our community due to displacement and immigration.
وحيث كان عدد المسيحيين في عام 2003 حوالي 1.5 مليون، وبسبب اضطهاد تنظيم القاعدة أولا وغيره من التنظيمات الإرهابية قلت أعداد المسيحيين إلى حوالي 400,000 أو 500,000.
Before the last regime change, the Christian population was 1.5 million, but in the aftermath of the last, of the attack of ISIS, the population dropped down to some 400,000 people only.
تم تحرير قضاء الحمدانية في عام 2016 شهر أكتوبر.
The district of Hamdaniya was liberated in
2016
okay.
شهر أكتوبر.
In October.
وبدأ المواطنين بالعودة طبعا.
Some Christians began to return back to their homes.
وكما رأيتم على شاشات التلفاز كانت جميع المدن مدمرة بالكامل أو شبه مدمرة.
Perhaps you may have seen almost all the villages and towns were devastated and destroyed by ISIS.
الخدمات الأساسية كانت معدومة.
The infrastructure was also totally destroyed.
إضافة إلى الخسائر المادية هناك خسائر أخرى غير منظورة.
In addition to material damage, there were also other damages caused to our people.
الهجرة اللي تسببت بفقدان حوالي 50%
one of them is immigration,
whereby
some 50% of our population decided to immigrate.
أيضا الاقتصاد تأثر لهذا المكون حيث تم تدمير جميع أو ما يقارب 90% من المشاريع الاقتصادية سواء الزراعية والصناعية.
In terms of economy, almost 90% of the economic facilities and the infrastructure were destroyed.
وتفتتت الأسر أو النسيج العائلي لهذا المكون بسبب الهجرة، فأصبح الإخوة إذا كانوا 3 أو 4 أحدهم يسكن أو انتقل إلى أستراليا أو أمريكا أو فرنسا أو أي مكان في أوروبا.
So as a result, the social fabric of our community was totally destroyed, and the Christian families were scattered about all around the world, with some of them living in Australia, in the States, in Europe, and other parts of the world.
لكن بفضل جهود المنظمات المجتمع المدني الدولية والمحلية.
But thanks to international humanitarian organizations and local organizations as well.
وكذلك دعم الحكومة العراقية.
And also the support from the Iraqi government.
تمكنا من إعادة البنية التحتية الأساسية واللي هي الماء والكهرباء والصحة والتربية.
We have been able to restore and reconstruct the infrastructure in the area with regard to schools and health facilities.
كذلك منظمات المجتمع المدني إضافة إلى البنية التحتية كان لها مساهمة في إعادة المواطنين العائدين إلى مهنهم السابقة.
Besides the local organizations helped with helping Christians to come back to their areas and start their life all over again.
لكن بعد هذا العمل وبعد التحرير خلق وضع جديد في مناطق سهل نينوى وقضاء الحمدانية.
So, but however, after the liberation, there was a new situation in the district of Hamdaniya.
والوضع الجديد هو أن الجهات أو المؤسسات العسكرية التي ساهمت في التحرير من ضمنها كانت فصائل غير منضبطة.
Yeah, this is so because there were some military organizations which were not part of the Iraqi army.
صحيح ساهمت في تحرير مناطقنا.
They did take part in liberating our region.
لكن بعد التحرير دخلت في مسار آخر وعملت في السياسة والاقتصاد. بعد التحرير عملت في مسار آخر.
Yeah. However, after the liberation, these organizations started to assume political and security responsibilities. Okay.
وتم الاستحواذ سياسيا واقتصاديا على هذه المناطق.
So they controlled the political and economic situation in the area.
الآن وبسبب الأوضاع العامة في الشرق الأوسط.
And now, because of the general situation in the Middle East,
أصبحت هذه الفصائل في مناطقنا عبئا أو تواجدها عبئا ويشكل خطر على أهلنا وشعبنا.
The presence of such organizations has been a threat to our Christian community in the area.
ولذلك أنا أعتقد أن الاستقرار في مناطقنا غير من الممكن الحفاظ عليه في ظل هذه الظروف إذا استمر تواجدها في مناطقنا.
For that reason, there is no stability for our Christian community as long as these militias are in power and in control in the area.
ونحن خائفون من هذا الموضوع. إذا تم استهداف هذه الجهات في مناطقنا فإن الهجرة سوف تعود مرة أخرى وسنخسر التواجد المسيحي في مناطق سهلنا.
We are totally scared that if such groups are targeted by by Israel or other sources, this might trigger a new wave of immigration of our people, and probably there will be no Christians in the foreseeable future as a result.
The time finished. Thank you.
Time is over. Thank you.
You'll have to come back tomorrow to hear his story fuller. Yeah. Thank you.
All right, before we hear from Maenza, we're going to go to Wade Kuzak, because I think you have to leave, right, Wade? So Wade, we're going to introduce Wade Kuzak, because he's going to be moderating a panel, actually 3 panel discussions tomorrow on Eurasia. So Wade, why don't you go ahead?
Thank you, Greg, and good evening, everyone. The first roundtable happened like 14 years ago, right, Greg? And we still have these roundtables in the United States, all over the world. We're still coming. We want to see each other. We want to hear each other's stories. We want to support each other. We want to do something together. And the roundtable idea, religious freedom roundtable idea, started to spreading all over the world. Now roundtable secretariats are in basically all the continents and also in Eurasia. Our organization focuses on religious freedom and social cohesion in Eurasia, Central Asia, and other former Soviet countries. So in many Eurasian countries, we start with the roundtable as the opportunity to do the research, to bring the best practices, to discuss the best practices exist in the world to advance religious freedom with local people in those countries where we're working with, to see how they react on that and how they receive this information and what they believe would be the best way for their own countries to adopt and practice. That's what we started to do in Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, in Georgia now, and following this research, we provide a lot of additional educational opportunities and discussional opportunities as well. So we growing and engaging multi-faith and multi-sectoral people from government, religious communities, civil society sector in dialogue, communication around religious freedom and social cohesion. And yes, tomorrow we will have a Eurasian panel discussion where we invited groups from Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, Georgia, and Moldova. Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan particularly, they already formed multi-faith, multi-sectoral group that involved in cross-cultural religious literacy and multi-faith dialogue, which already brought some positive result, impacted the situation with religious freedom in those countries, and they will share it with you tomorrow. It's not going to be me who going to talk about situation with religious freedom in Central Asia and some good developments that we observe. It's them who already was involved in roundtable discussion, all the educational opportunities. So I anticipate a very thoughtful and deep discussion and opportunity to ask our panelists the questions. So please welcome to our session tomorrow from between 11 and 12:30, where our Eurasian, Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, Moldova, and Georgia will be presented. So thank you.
Thank you so much. We're looking forward to it. So tomorrow we'll be doing a panel with Majority World Voices that we're so glad Mercury won, and Suzanne Grishman is going to be moderating. And so also joining us will be Nazira Gouria. We were hoping she'd be here right now, but she has some trouble getting out of Iraq and Syria. But she's a regional co-chair in the largest region of Northeast Syria that has built religious freedom. So we're going to have some really interesting people. I'm now going to hand it off to another one of our participants tomorrow. When we were putting this, working with Suzanne and about who were those doing the best work on the ground that either built religious freedom as a government official or were doing work as a nonprofit to build religious freedom in the Middle East, we had to go to Maenza, because he's doing some of the most instrumental work that he could talk about, and you'll hear more tomorrow. But he runs the House of Coexistence in Sinjar, and he also won the State Department's Religious Freedom Award in January and came to Washington and was presented with that. And he also won the Aurora Prize and actually shared it with our own Charmaine Heading, and I think that was from George and Amal Clooney. So anyway, he's very celebrated for his amazing work, but we all know him as a human being who just cares deeply about the people of Sinjar and has done great stuff. So we'll hand it off to you. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Nadine. It is so an honor and pleasure to be participating in this roundtable and in this event. We know that Nadine is so very much engaged in different topics in Iraq, especially for the minorities. And if I'm going to speak about what's going on now to the Yazidi community, I'm just going to duplicate what Mr. Issam said, but in more dramatic view, because the situation of Sinjar, I think tomorrow we are going to speak a little bit about that. I will not go in deep in that, but just a small contribution. Why I have established House of Coexistence is in Sinjar, where genocide had happened. And many people said, so the other community or those people who perpetrated genocide, they should first start the step of the peace and step asking for the coexistence. And what I was all the time blamed why I am asking for the coexistence and peace, while the others even do not apologize for what they did. We know that in all communities, 90% of the community are normal people. And you have all the time those 10% extremists who are doing violent, who are killing the others. And you just ask yourself, should you stop there or you have to build foundations and an establishment like this one to asking for freedom of religion and to asking for the brotherhood and to find a way how we can coexist together. We hear today what Charmaine told us last year, exactly last year, like today, what had happened to the innocent people were attacked. And when we are speaking to 2014, just a small info. Unfortunately, my community is still 65% of the community is displaced because they cannot return back to Sinjar because of the different political issues. We were monitoring this year hate speech in Iraq against Yazidis and other minorities, and you can't imagine that because of just one topic. Within 2 weeks, there were 1 million hate speech against Yazidis, just because somebody he didn't mean even spoke that whenever extremists or extreme Muslims are, there will be genocide, and just for that, one of the community leaders said. And the 1 million hate speech were against Yazidis within 2 weeks. So the situation in the country is so fragile, unfortunately, yet. And we don't know even where is the next perspective, especially because of the Middle East conflict, because of the rising of all those militias who are backed by different religious groups. So thank you very much first, and we will keep it for tomorrow discussion to deep in that. Thanks.
Great, thank you. All right, now we're going to go to Carter Allen. She's with the U.S. State Department International Religious Freedom Office. She also is part of the IRFBA. Do Do you guys still call it IRFBA?
We're working on it.
IRFBA is the International Religious Freedom of Belief Alliance, but it's now the Article 18 Alliance. But Carter basically is the secretariat for the alliance. So over to you, Carter.
Yes, I'm the secretary, and I'm also the chair of the Education and Youth Working Group. And as part of my chair duties, I'm creating a toolkit for IRFBA governments to use to better engage and include youth in their work, including topics like programming, media, outreach, and policy best practices. I've been doing individual consultations with civil society and government youth to figure out what the best issues to cover are and what the best practices and cases will be. I'm hoping to also address things to avoid in the youth space and the way that governments can avoid limiting youth and all of that sort of stuff. So I'm looking forward to sharing it as it comes out, and I very much welcome any input from any governments or any youth-oriented organizations here.
Thank you, Carter. Next, we have Nathan Weiniger, formerly of the IRF Roundtable. I mean, when he was with 21 Wilberforce, he was one of our most active, roundtable partners, basically participants, working group leaders. Then he was with the State Department IRF office. Now he's with the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom. So it's good to see you, Nathan.
Thank you, Greg. It's very good to be here. It's particularly good for us to take time to listen to the stories of the suffering and the resilience of people who have experienced the most extreme violations of religious freedom rights. Thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing with us. For those of you who do not know, the United States Commission on International Religious Freedom is an independent bipartisan commission established by Congress in 1998 and recently reauthorized, thank goodness, a couple weeks ago for another 2-year term. Our commission is made up of appointees from leadership in the House and in the Senate and by the President of the United States. And our mandate is to monitor and advise on religious freedom policy to the U.S. government, whether that be Congress, the President, or the State Department. We produce an annual report every year that is vitally sourced from civil society partners, such as many of you who are here today. And so I want to really encourage you to continue engaging with us, those who have. Those who haven't been able to engage with us before, I welcome that engagement on behalf of the Commission. Both the commissioners themselves are very keen to engage on these issues and to learn more from civil society actors, as well as the professional nonpartisan staff who do a significant amount of the legwork. Since the annual report comes out by name once a year, but unfortunately the situations develop much more quickly than that. We also produce a series of reports every year and are very active in this regard. In the last month alone, we've produced an India country update, an Iraq update based on the 10 years after the ISIS-led genocide against Yazidis, Christians, Shia, and others. A report on the state-controlled religions and religious organizations in Vietnam, the sinicization of religion in China, revisiting the country of particular concern designations, which are one of the main policy tools of the Secretary of State for highlighting religious freedom violations and concerns, and a Cuba country update. We're continuing to host hearings on Capitol Hill, taking in expert testimony and including it in the official record of the U.S. government. And we're also very engaged with expanding our use of the Frank R. Wolf Forbes Victims List. This is a really important way for civil society actors to engage with the Commission, specifically victims of violence or persecution or prisoners who've been targeted based on their religious identity or religious belief or supporting advocacy for religious freedom. These are individuals who we want to help highlight. We want to do it carefully so that we don't increase exposure for them to worse treatment or their families or religious communities. So when we engage on these lists, it's vital that we have civil society's input from the family, from the communities themselves, so that we know how and if we can highlight them. But please continue sending those victims to our list. We have over 2,000 now. We're building it out and increasing the representation of different religious communities in that list who are victims is extremely important. Specifically, the countries we're looking at relate to our recommendations to the Secretary of State for designation. You can find those on our website. I will not go through them all now. But if you would like, I'm very happy to chat with anyone this week about how we work and how we can work together. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Nathan. Next, we're going to go to Giselle Lima. She's here from Panama. She started an IRF roundtable in Panama, and she just chaired a Faith and Freedom Summit in Panama just a couple weeks ago, I think. But Giselle.
Yes, good evening, everyone. I'm Giselle Lima, as Greg said. I am a co-chair of the Roundtable in Panama. We established like a year and a half ago with the help of Simran and, of course, Greg and Nadine. We've been working a lot. And as a product of this work we've been doing, we had a Faith and Freedom Summit a couple of weeks ago in Panama with over 40 speakers all over the world, pushing for religious freedom. It was very successful. We had the participation of the Panamanian government. The Minister of Government was there. The Minister of Foreign Affairs was also represented. And although in Panama we don't really have religious persecution, we do want to give a new viewpoint on religious freedom, because religious freedom is not only not being persecuted or being able to pray in our own churches, but also that we are respected and that we can have freedom of expression of our religions, and we have some room for improvement in Panama and all of Latin America. So I'm happy to be here, I think, along with Parliamentarian Ramos. We are a few people from Latin America here, so I'm very glad to be sharing with you. I didn't know I was going to speak tonight, so I didn't really prepare so much, but I'm really grateful for Greg for having me here, and of course learning about all the issues there are in the world, and hopefully I can help from Panama to solve all these issues as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Giselle. And I just want to credit her for putting together a roundtable in a country that is not on fire. Like you said, your conditions are pretty positive, but it's so important to do the work ahead of time, because there are bad actors that could bring division to a country. One event can cause all sorts of division. And if you've done the hard work ahead of time by building that resilience, that cohesion, having the religious communities know each other, if those events happen, it makes it harder for people to take advantage of them. And so convincing people to safeguard their own conditions can be hard sometimes because it takes work. And if people don't think they need it, they're not always driven to do it. So I really appreciate you modeling that for us. We're hoping to do more like this in Latin America. And I do just want to do a shout out. I know she'll hate me for it. Mariah Mercer is here, the Deputy Director of the Religious Freedom Office at the State Department. We so thank you for your constant support and being able to join us today.
Thank you. Sorry for being late. Time is hard.
You do not have to apologize. You are here, and we are thrilled. Go to the next one. Pass it off. Go ahead.
All right.
Hand it off to Greg.
Just real quick, I'll introduce Eric Rue and Dr. Tomasz Schirmacher. They're going to do like a joint presentation about, just to give us an update on the Forbes Roundtable Brussels EU, right?
Yes, well pronounced. So, yeah, maybe an update and maybe a little bit of story about the Brussels Roundtable, which we call FORB, because in Europe it's freedom of religion or belief more than earth, but whatever. So the story is this one. I think in 2012 or 13, I met with Greg and Chris Sapel in Washington, and they definitely brainwashed me thinking that like a roundtable was needed in Europe. So I came back to Europe with one idea in my mind: I need to create a roundtable, I need to create a roundtable. And we did it in Brussels. And it started by quite a success story, because I think we did the first meeting in beginning of 2014. And at this time there was a sort of bill called a resolution that was going to pass at the Council of Europe, which was going to affect 48 countries, the 48 countries of the continent, to raise their children according to their own beliefs. And it has been a success story because so many people work together at the Council of Europe, in Brussels, in all Europe, lobbying their MPs and their governments. And also we have worked with the Washington Roundtable in a joint initiative, a joint letter, which I think at the time was the most signed letter of all times in 2014, that was sent to all people of the Council of Europe. So at the end, I think in April 10, 2014, the resolution was not passed and was rejected. And instead, they issued a resolution protecting the right of parents for raising their kids in their own faith and respecting religious freedom. So it started on the success story, and we had other successes around the years, not always. Honestly, some of the initiatives were not successful, so that means that we still have to handle it, but many were. And I would say that it also brought people together to work on religious freedom, and people who would never have worked together if not for the Roundtable. We have had more than 120 different organizations participating, relationship with European Union institutions, ambassador, etc. We made a lot of, we created friendship, and friendship oriented towards good results in defending religious freedom. And I hope it will increase and continue. And we are not as active as the Washington one because we don't meet every week, and we need to increase that. We still are open for any help, but I think it's something that is useful, and it's the evidence that it's not only the Roundtable in Washington, it is a model which works. And if you implement the model in other places, keeping like the fundamentals as all-inclusive, opt-in initiatives, respectful agreement or disagreement, all that things, it will work everywhere, and it will increase the efficiency of the whole network. And I will give the floor to the chair. I mean, we have been co-chairing, he was the chair, and I need to say that the fact that a Scientologist got the backup from a chair who is a German evangelical Christian is a bold statement in itself. If we could do it, I mean, I think many people can work together. You would not think they should work together. Thomas?
Yeah, thank you very much. As a German, I have to start at a different point, pointing out of the window. If there is a better place to do an interreligious freedom roundtable, please tell me. I think this is the best place in the world. You look out of the window and you realize that freedom of religion and belief is not only a matter of freedom of press or whether you can say what you want to do or you can worship. It's easily can become a matter of life and death. You know what I'm talking about. Yeah? This is the visible place. I know that National Socialism was not only about freedom of religion or belief, but it 100% also was a problem of freedom of religion and belief. Yeah? Even so, this is not often made. Okay, as a German, forgive me to this interplay. Yeah. The European Roundtable is a little bit in the shadow of Washington, but it has, I think, two major roles to play. Number one, many people are not aware how extremely secular Brussels is. I'm not saying Europe, but the people that end up in Brussels are very secular. So when some years ago, the Foreign Action Service, so the Foreign Office of the EU, wanted to write its famous document on freedom of religion and belief, they came to us. I'm president of the International Institute for Religious Freedom, and asked for help. I said, you have 5,500 staff. I mean, yeah, they said, we checked them all. No one felt able to work on a kind of a document of this kind. Yeah? So it's the members of the European Parliament, some of them are very religious, that then got involved. Yeah? So it's somehow a little different thing that we gather religious leaders, small religions, big religions like me as an archbishop, with the still majority religion in Europe. And we have a close connection to the Humanist Union, of course, But it's very often we feel we are not defending a specific religious group, but we are advocating on behalf of being religious, no matter what that means. Yeah? And the second thing is, please do not forget, it's not only the European Union, it's also the European Council, and it includes the European Court for Human Rights. And the decision on this court on religious freedom are copied everywhere in the world. And other than in the US, if we have decisions upcoming, often they are Europe-wide discussed. It's known what the decision, the upcoming, similar like new laws that come or new provisions that come there globally, and it's important that we are there to fuel in the positions of the world religions. So even though we are a little bit in the shadow, I think the influence is far beyond Europe. It really goes beyond. So for example, the African Union, very often as they do not have a kind of highest court for the African Union, very often just take over decisions of the European Court for the whole continent of Africa. So I'm glad that we have this in Europe. I hope that every continent gets its round table, and I only can say that it both works well for the religions itself, but also, I mentioned the International Institute for Religious Freedom, that of course is globally, but we are very glad that in this roundtable we have direct access to the larger religions, but also to many minority religions, especially some of the minority religions which are not in every country, so it's not easy to get access. But more or less all of them are represented by someone in Brussels, and so we can sit on this table there.
Thank you so much. And Hilda, thank you, Hilda, from the, I have the online on my computer, reminded us that the roundtables was actually in the OSCE's latest report listed as best practices for doing multi-faith work. And so, but I think you make a good point, which is the roundtables are all different. In every country, they look different. So in Washington, it's Earth Roundtable. We meet every week, and we do multi-faith advocacy that's pretty much international based. Some meet monthly, some meet quarterly. I think, and they all have, I should say all, there are very many different names. The Forb Forum is the UK Roundtable, but they meet, I think, every 6 weeks. Is that right? And then 6 weeks. And then in Kazakhstan, they've just launched 8 of them, and they call them clubs. How about that? Is it a religious freedom club? Multi-faith clubs. So the name, how often they meet, and sometimes they're internal focused, like in Kazakhstan, they're going to be working on their own communities, but sometimes they're external focused. I know you focus more on international religious freedom. So anyway, to just let you know, the reason that they work is because they're tailored to each individual community. And so if you're interested in starting one in your own community, we'd love to hear like what that could look like and how we could support you. We are now going to move into the civil society part of our program. And I'm going to hand it off to Lauren Homer. She's actually the co-chair of the Earth Roundtable for the Middle East and has been working in Northeast Syria and these regions longer than I have been. But today she's also the co-chair of the Roundtable for the Ukraine Working Group. So she's got a full plate. I think you're going to be talking about that today. So Lauren, hand it off to you.
Thanks so much, Nadine. And I just wanted to say it's so great to see so many old and a few new friends, but mostly old friends here. It's wonderful. And I just congratulate everybody on the work they're doing. I would have loved to have had 2 people from Ukraine who are here in town today come and speak, but they've got other engagements with the German government. But they're here for the ministerial. And one of them, Alexander Zayats, is kind of a model of what Nadine was just talking about. He started something called the Ukrainian Council on Churches and Religious Organizations many years ago. And it's a multi-faith group. They work together and developed really excellent working relationships on how they could coordinate their relationship with the Ukrainian government. And it's proved invaluable in wartime because they are all very much involved in providing humanitarian aid and spiritual counsel to people. And then the other person is Yvestre Zoria, who is the deputy head of the ministry or the Department of External Relations of the Orthodox Church of Ukraine, which is the Free Ukrainian Orthodox Church. He had been a member of the Ukrainian Orthodox Church, which is the one under the Moscow Patriarchate, and he speaks pretty eloquently about why there was a need for a free church. I asked for a little time today because I wanted to address the new law that Ukraine has passed, which bans the Russian Orthodox Church from operating in Ukraine and also bans churches, the religious organizations of churches with religious centers in Russia from operating in Ukraine. The law is targeted in that respect on the religious organization, not the practice of the faith. And Ukraine permits unregistered religious activities. So even if every single Ukrainian Orthodox Church legal body was shut down, it would not stop the practice of their faith in Ukraine. There have been a couple of things that have been bandied about. One is that there can never be a restriction on any religious organization based on national security, which is the premise of the Ukrainian law. But actually, the Parliamentary Assembly of Europe just recently issued both a report and a resolution that addresses that issue. And it recognizes that a religious organization can still operate as a propagandist for a point of view that is detrimental to the national security and the health and safety of the citizens of another country. And that's the case with the Russian Orthodox Church. And the Council of Europe recognized that it operates as a propaganda arm of the Kremlin and has for decades. In fact, back in the Soviet period, the Russian Orthodox Church was run by the propaganda department of the Supreme Soviet of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union. So unfortunately, these ties have continued, and unfortunately, the Russian Orthodox Church did not break away from that relationship with its government. The Ukrainian Orthodox Church chose in 1990 to stay under the Moscow Patriarchate at a time when they could have obtained independence, which is called autocephaly. So the consequence of those decisions are still reverberating. Another point that has come up is that the Ukrainians are being accused of imposing a collective punishment on the Ukrainian Orthodox Church. But the concept of collective punishment actually comes from the Geneva Convention and is talking about putting criminal penalties on people in times of war. There are no criminal penalties involved here on any Ukrainian believers of any type, and including Orthodox believers. It simply addresses whether or not the Russian Orthodox Church, which is a propaganda arm of the Russian government, can continue to direct the activities of a religious organization inside Ukraine. So I will be providing through Haley on the IRF Roundtable website citations to these things, but I refer you to the resolution 2567, which was adopted on October 1st by the Parliamentary Assembly, recognizing that there are exceptions for national security, propaganda for war, and advocacy of racial and religious hatred in the ICCPR, and therefore those are effective in Europe. And in conclusion, I just want to say that sometimes it feels like things have come full circle. Charmaine was talking about the Holocaust, and we know that the German Holocaust Memorial is just outside our window, and unfortunately in Russia things have kind of come full circle from the heady days of the 1990s when there was freedom for all to advocating for repression of other faiths and advocating for the extinguishing of a neighboring country, the country of Ukraine, and the extinguishing the memory of its people as Ukrainians and treating it all as Russia. Thanks for listening.
Thanks so much. We really appreciate that, Lauren. Now we're going to go to Patrice Peterson from First Freedom Foundation and another regular, longtime participant of the Roundtable. Thanks a lot, Patrice.
Thank you, Nadine. I have a very exciting announcement to make today. I've been coming to these events for about 5 years now, and every year we say, you know, what we really need is a mass movement. We have all of these issues that we're all working on that are all genuine tragedies in so many different places, and for the most part, the public remains blissfully unaware. And I'm here to change that. So the First Freedom Foundation is, starting next week, launching a FORB Fellowship. We have spots for 36 young people, 32 of which are already filled. And in those 32 spots, we have 28 different countries represented so far, 19 different religions. The average age is around 32. This is different from what we had in mind when we first set out to do this. We envisioned a much younger group, and yet a lot more experienced cohort, or candidates have applied for this fellowship. People that have, on average, about a decade of experience doing professional human rights advocacy, several of which are watching right now from their home countries. And they felt the need for this unity and for this collaborative effort. And so we are very excited about what this very talented, very advanced group will be able to achieve together. What they're going to be doing is engaging in scholarship to learn about religious freedom philosophically, theologically, and also best practices. They're also going to learn practical tools, like the strategy behind how to actually win. Part of my philosophy is that you owe it to your philosophy to study how to win. And so we're going to be getting into a lot of those nuts and bolts. And then there's also going to be actual service. So it's not just going to be a theoretical fellowship, but they're going to be engaging in actual practical advocacy. Each quarter they will select one goal, one topic, and engage in advocacy meetings, events, social media events. Well, the first event is going to be the second year of the Global Youth Summit, which we had the really successful version last year. So it's not just an academic fellowship, but it will be a practical, experiential one as well. So how can they help you in your organizations and your countries with all the struggles that you're working on? We are looking to build, like I said, a mass movement. We will have a major focus on social media outreach. We'll have a podcast. We'll have lots of events. We're building an online hub. And so when you have issues that you would like to spread awareness about, this is something that the fellows will be able to help with. So we are really hoping that this will be a resource for everyone in this movement to amplify your own messages. And also, I do have a request that how you can help us. Like I said, we have 32 of the 36 spots filled. We have lots of other applicants. We had over 50 applicants for some of these spots. But we are really trying to maximize the diversity. We really want to achieve representation from as many different countries, from as many different religions as possible. And so, like I said, I have these 4 spots left, and we, to this point, do not have any representation from Armenia or Artsakh, Iran, Turkey, Syria, Nicaragua, Cuba, Central Asia. Wade's not here, but I was going to try to snag him. And for religions, we don't have any Sikhs or Scientologists or Baha'is. So that a lot of people in this room have contacts in a lot of those areas. And I hope that you will share. Yeah, Simran, I'm looking at you. I've already pestered him a lot. And it's not the right fit for everybody. I understand that. It's a serious time commitment. But I really believe that with the caliber of applicants and now fellows that we have starting next week, we're really going to be able to achieve something incredible. And so I'd love your help in rounding out this group, and we'd love to be of help to all of you in advancing your various missions. Thank you.
Thanks, Patrice. Next we have, is it Afshin Sahedi of the International Organization to Preserve Human Rights?
Yes. Thank you very much for this opportunity to save the time, I have my report written, so I try to finalize it within a few minutes. These days mark the first anniversary of the horrific anti-Semitic terrorist attack on southern Israel, during which more than 1,200 innocent people from around the world who had gathered in Israel for a music festival were brutally murdered. The victims of this heinous act were in fact casualties of the policies of ruling regime in Iran that promotes religious hatred. However, these are not the only victims of such divisive and hateful policies. We are also on the second anniversary of the massacre in Zahedan and Khash, two cities located in southeastern Iran, where hundreds of innocent men, women, and children were slaughtered simply because they followed a different faith. This massacre, too, was carried out under the order of the same individual responsible for the attack on the Nova festival in Israel. In this horrific massacre, thousands of Sunni worshippers in Zahedan and Khash were returning from Friday prayers when they were attacked with automatic weapons mounted on the helicopters and machine guns on the ground, brutally killed in cold blood. Over 200 people lost their lives and hundreds were injured, many permanently disabled. Ladies and gentlemen, this brutal killing on what is now known as Bloody Friday of Zahedan is just one example of the hateful policies carried out by the regime, by the ruling regime in Iran against the innocent Sunni population. Iran has long had the highest execution rate in the world, second only to China. However, the per capita rate of execution in Iran is highest globally. Last year alone, over 700 people were executed in Iran, with more than 50% of these executions taking place in Baluchistan province, despite of the fact that the province's population accounts for less than 3% of the country's total population. This means that the half of all executions in the country with the world's highest per capita execution rate were inflicted upon just 3% of the population of all whom are Sunnis. The systemic persecution of Sunnis in Iran, Baluchistan, is not limited to extrajudicial killings, as many are also killed in prison or under torture or also in the streets by shooting. This is a state-organized policy, as official reports reveal that high-ranking Shia clerics have instructed security forces to restrict the Sunni population. Thus, in addition to their goal of eliminating Israel, Shia religious leaders in Iran are also working to limit the Sunni population within the country. In comprehensive implementation of this policy, the sectarian regime in Iran even denies birth certificates to many babies born into Sunni families, leaving them unable to obtain national identity. Their mosques have been destroyed, and even no mosque exists for millions of Sunnis residing in Tehran. Those practices point to a silent genocide that has been occurring against Sunni citizens in Iran for years. Meanwhile, the regime hypocritically spreads anti-Semitic propaganda and incites violence, especially among Sunni Muslims in the Middle East, through false narratives and hate speech. We seek recognition of the silent genocide against Sunnis in Iran, in the province Baluchistan, as a crime against humanity, and call for it to be subjected to the international accountability and punishment under applicable laws. From Zahedan to Gaza, the violence against humanity shares a common root, one that must be eradicated. Thank you for patience.
Great, thank you. Thank you. All right, next we have Dr. Tong with an update on Vietnam and Thailand.
Yes, greetings to all friends and colleagues gathering around this rectangular round table. It's really nice to see you in person in Berlin. The most brutal Minister of Public Security of contemporary Vietnam is now both head of state and head of the Communist Party of Vietnam. Under his leadership, we have already noted a significant increase in religious persecution. Independent religious groups face not only increased persecution, direct persecution by the government, but also increased suppression by state-controlled religious and pseudo-religious organizations. And USEF, as mentioned by Nathan, recently released its research report highlighting the repressive role of such state-controlled actors. A typical example of a pseudo-religious organization is the Cao Dai sect that the government of Vietnam created from scratch in 1997. It has since forcefully and at times violently seized 300 Cao Dai temples and has violently disrupted religious practices conducted by independent Cao Dai followers in their private homes. A typical example of a religious organization that has been co-opted by the government is the Evangelical Church of Vietnam South. For the past many years, it has worked hand in hand with the police in Vietnam to force members of the Montagnard Christian house churches to abandon the house churches or even disband the house churches and join and be absorbed into the Evangelical Church of Vietnam South. Many of the church leaders, Montagnard church leaders, have been harassed, detained, arrested, tortured, or even imprisoned. One of them has disappeared for the past month under police custody. Earlier this year, thanks to this roundtable, we obtained over 100 signatures for a joint letter in support of the Cao Dai followers in Vietnam in their efforts to regain usage and access to their temples in time for the celebration of their centennial of their religion, which will be in early December next year. So it's an urgency situation here. And today, we are going to ask for support for a joint letter, again facilitated by the Roundtable, in support of Montagnard Christian house churches that resist government control and that refuse to join the Evangelical Church of Vietnam South. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Tong. Next, we have Ambassador Grover Joseph Reese, also in Vietnam.
Okay. I want to call your attention and ask your help for one specific and really scary example of what Dr. Tong is talking about. I helped to supervise a legal clinic for refugees and asylum seekers in Bangkok. And although we didn't plan it that way, the majority of our clients are victims of religious persecution. Vietnamese Christians, mostly ethnic minority evangelicals, are one of those groups. And there's a young man who I've gotten to know. We call him Matthew. His real name is E. Quinn Badop. He is a member of the Montagnard ethnic minorities, and he is an evangelical Christian. And he was put in jail by the Vietnamese government for one of their favorite crimes, which is called injuring the national unity. And they were going to put him in jail again, and he fled. And he and a few other young Montagnards have put together this wonderful organization called Montagnard Stand for Justice. And with the help of Boat People SOS, as well as the sister organization in Thailand, the People Serving People Foundation, they have helped train people in Vietnam who are with these churches, who are still in the country, about how to document human rights violations. And just the facts. Don't embellish. Don't use that as an occasion to evangelize. And then they have reported those violations to UN human rights entities. I was very skeptical about this at first, but frankly, it's working. It's generated dozens of what they call allegation letters from the rapporteurs and other human rights instrumentalities. And it really irritates the government of Vietnam, but sometimes the persecution decreases when they do this, at least in particular places and at least for a while. Well, a year ago, there was a terrorist attack, or at least a violent attack, on a police station near the border in Vietnam. Neither Matthew nor anybody with Montagnard Stand for Justice had anything remotely to do with this. But sure enough, the government of Vietnam, using an old Soviet-era trick, charged him, tried him in absentia. The whole trial of 100 people took 1 day in a mobile court, and he has been sentenced to 10 years in jail. And now they have asked for his extradition from Thailand, and it should be a slam dunk. This is obviously a political case. If you could line up 1,000 people and we all go through and say, pick out the most innocent person in this group, Matthew would definitely be one of the top 2 or 3. Nobody really thinks he did this. The Vietnamese government knows he didn't do it. The Thai government almost certainly knows that the Vietnamese government knows that. But we're up against, the court has held that he can be extradited because they won't look at the fact that he's going to be tortured. There's a law says in Thailand say you cannot return people to torture. They say that's for the executive branch to consider. And of course, they won't consider whether he's guilty or innocent, which usually isn't considered in extradition. So now we are appealing, and we have a chance on appeal because there were some serious errors of law. But the main thing we have to do is convince the Thai government, which is a generally democratic government. It's a government that generally respects freedom of religion and permits, doesn't typically persecute human rights defenders, that participating in this transnational repression, facilitating it, making it happen, turning over not only this innocent person, but this terribly effective human rights defender to a government that hates him for that reason and that will put him in jail and that will certainly torture him is a terrible thing to do. We have a joint letter going out. Several of you have seen it, I think. Please help, do whatever you can. Let's raise the profile of this issue. It's one of the worst things happening in the world today. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And we're passing the flyer with a QR code here for those who plan to sign it.
Okay,
Thank you.
great. No, I was just thinking we should do a multi-faith letter, but you're doing one because Kaylee, a lot of work she puts into this. So tell us real quick. We're going to go to 2 quick folks that are joining us virtually, but you can. What happens if you scan this, Kaylee? Does this give you the multi-faith letters?
So if you scan the QR code, you're going to have access to the schedule, the program, a floor plan, all those sorts of things. I'm going to add the link to that multi-faith letter on there right now.
Okay,
so that way when you scan it, you can have access to that.
Wonderful. Thanks so much. She's always on top of everything. I know she doesn't. She's like, yeah, me neither. So we're going to move now. Is Kevneet Singh with us online? Are you still here? Let me see if I see him. Do you see him?
No, I don't.
Okay, he may have left. How about Didi Lagason from Save the Persecuted Christians? Nope. Oh, okay, so we went a little late, so we lost our online folks, but saves us some time, so I'll hand it back over to Greg.
Thank you. Suzanne?
Nope.
Of course. I know what she was going to talk about. Thanks. So Didi Lagason is the executive director of Save the Persecuted Christians, and I'm the board chairwoman. We have been working extensively with the ethnic cleansing of Artsakh and the Armenian Christians and the atrocities and human rights violations that Azerbaijan has committed. And we recently had a hearing and a delegation of 10 witnesses that we brought to DC. We had some wonderful meetings with the State Department. Some of the initiatives that came out of this week-long hearings and meetings was that Azerbaijan is having COP29 conference on November 10th. They basically have been awarded for their ethnic cleansing, and they have given them the COP29 conference, which is going to be bringing in all of these climate change leaders from all around the world, and they are greenwashing the land that the Christians were just ethnically cleansed from in Nagorno-Karabakh.
So this is something that we have put together as an initiative with several different coalitions. This is another wonderful example of international religious freedom and beliefs and organizations coming together to work together for a cause. And there is going to be a Stop Cop Baku initiative that we are putting out, and we are trying to do this internationally as well, not just coming from the United States to put pressure on Azerbaijan. There are prisoners of war that they're holding right now, and they are currently ethnically cleansing the land that they moved over 120,000 Christians out of. So that will be an initiative, and I will also give you information on that to Kaylee to put in the chat.
Thanks, Suzanne. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so that's it for the agenda tonight. Again, thank you for coming and participating. I just want to give a quick preview now of tomorrow's program, and then we can go. We have a reception. We have to follow. Hang on. So anyway, tomorrow the opening session begins at 9 a.m. in the Ball Saal. I think that's down. Is it on the same floor? It's on the same floor, but it's down the hall. Anyway, it's the Ball Saal. It's a big room like this one, the bigger one. Ballroom, that's the word I was looking for. I'm tired, sorry. But we're going to have opening remarks from the conveners. Then we're going to have VIP keynotes. Some of the VIPs are sitting here. Ambassador Rehak will be here tomorrow. But you have Fernanda San Martin Carrasco, who's director of the International Panel of Parliamentarians for Freedom of Religion and Belief, and a former MP from Belize. There's a member of parliament from Panama, Jose Ramos, and a member of parliament from Ghana, Godfred Seydou Jassa. So they will be giving their remarks tomorrow morning in the opening session. We have a few others joining us as well. Chris Seipel, Dennis Hoover. We're going to provide framing comments to frame the panel discussions that will follow. You heard from Wade Kuzak. There's going to be some folks from Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, Georgia, and Moldova as part of the Eurasia discussions. Then you've got, some of those folks were in the room. I don't see them anymore. Then we have the MENA region panel discussion that Suzanne is going to be moderating, and you're going to be hearing more from our gentleman to my left. Then the key thing at 2:45, we're going to have what needs to be done. After those panel discussions on Eurasia and the MENA region, which focus on freedom of religion or belief, security, and building social cohesion and resilience, we're going to focus on what needs to be done as we all leave, after the ministerial, after the program. So we're going to have a discussion on academic initiatives first. May Cannon, she was here. I think she stepped out, but they had an academic session that started earlier today in this room. They're going to give a little recap on what they discussed in the launch of a global academic council. Then coming back after a coffee break, we're going to have a discussion on corporate initiatives. Simran Stoopnagel, who's down at the end, is going to be leading that, and he's got two guests who are. You want to just introduce them real quick and just recognize who they are, Simran, and then we got to keep going. Oh. Well, then we have media initiatives. Rachel Miner over here, and I think Tom Gallagher. They're going to have a discussion on media initiatives. So you got academic initiatives, corporate initiatives, and media initiatives. Then we're going to open it up. An open mic. Anybody in the audience who has ideas on what we should be doing, like Patrice's great ideas and others. Anybody who, I think we're going to have at least 30 minutes just to solicit ideas on what can we be doing to build the movement, like a real movement that includes we the people, and increase our impact. So that we have less, a decreasing number of these horror stories happening around the world. Simran, real quick, just invite your guests.
Yeah, for the Earth Secretariat Corporate Council, we have two very distinguished guests, Ben Christensen, who is a senior executive at SAP, which is Germany's most valuable publicly traded company, where he oversaw global partnerships in one of the AI verticals, and built a coalition between about a dozen Fortune 100 companies on religious freedom, where these conversations are starting. And I've Eva Witzman here from the Marriott School of Business. Marriott was also a faith-owned company, and she spent the last 7 years researching and engaging household name corporations on religious freedom for the Marriott School, and has a tremendous amount of case knowledge from the academic and the field world. And I myself represent Yogi Tea, which is going to be in your gift bag. The largest herbal tea company in the world, also awarded the most faith-friendly company in Europe last year. This year, not, but last year.
Thank you. So we're going to have the academic council, a corporate council, and a media council. Just again, trying to come up with initiatives that will increase our impact. And then after a conclusion, which wraps up that core part of the program, there will be a documentary film screening for anyone who wants to watch Amen, 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 a story for our times. It was produced by Tom Gallagher. He was the executive producer and director. He's with the Religion Media Foundation. He will be here tomorrow. And then we have a reception and awards dinner tomorrow night. So all are welcome tomorrow. Even if you haven't registered already, you're welcome. You know, it'll be right here in this hotel, I think, right down the hall. And with that, thank you very much. It's good to see everybody, and we'll see you tomorrow.